The Cincinnati Reds do not have a single arm in their bullpen that can strike fear in the hearts of their opponent.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Jeff. He's Steve. And on today's Locked On Reds podcast, a little bit later on, we're going to tell you why there's a lot of pressure on Rhett Lowder tonight. In just a few minutes, we are going to dissect another start from Nick Lodolo that looked good. Question mark. And I'm going to tell you why the question mark is there. But we will begin with another frustrating loss by the Cincinnati Reds to the Milwaukee Brewers. Wash, rinse, repeat. Whatever, lather, rinse, repeat, whatever. It feels like the Reds play the Brewers win. I don't know why. There are reasons, because you can just insert them in the blank spot, because the Cincinnati Reds team loves to lose to Milwaukee, and they did it again on Monday night, and it was all the bullpen's fault. And there was a little bit of questioning from my angle, Steve, when Chase Petty is brought out to relieve Nick Lodolo. Nick Lodolo threw a lot of pitches. I understand that part. But Chase Petty was the guy that gets brought out. And he is left in after he gives up not one, but 2 runs. And he gets the final out of the 6th inning. And then they bring him back out again for the 7th. What happens next? Bedlam ensues. And when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds, Steve, this bullpen looks ridiculously bad, and I don't know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, it doesn't look ridiculously bad. It is ridiculously bad. Look, if you want to have a great season as a Reds fan right now, just watch the first 5 innings and go mow the yard or have a beverage on the lanai. Just get away from the TV, because that's how you have fun as a Reds fan right now. This team with its starting pitching, is as weird as the starting pitching has been this year. At least the first 5 innings have been fun more often than not. You look at this bullpen, Jeff, there's nobody down there that I can point to with any sense of certainty and say they're going to come in and they're going to get outs and they're going to shut down the opposing team. And none of that changes with the news that we heard during the broadcast yesterday, which is that today Emilio is back. And it doesn't matter. I don't have much confidence in him right now, and he's only going to give you 1 inning every other day. So it doesn't really fix the problems with this bullpen, Jeff. I don't know what Tito should have done in that situation with Chase Petty, because I don't know that it would have made a difference. I mean, who would you rather him have sent out instead of sending Chase Petty out for that 2nd inning? Who would you have gone to?
It just, to me, it feels like what you got out of him in the 6th was what you were going to get out of him, and to push him any further was like you're sitting there at a poker hand and you got a 2-5 offsuit playing some Texas Hold'em, and you have no clue what the other guy's got, but you're going to stay in that hand for whatever reason. Maybe you've just had a couple too many. I don't know. But when it comes to keeping Chase Petty in there, like, I don't know that I have a bona fide answer for that, but I think it's just somebody else, because he was very uninspiring in the 6th inning. And there's been some interesting performances from him to this point where it's like, okay, he shut the door on some teams. But if you look at the stats, if you look at the underlying numbers, there are some predictors, there are some things that point to him having been very lucky. And I feel like the Reds were ignoring those and just saying, you know what, his ERA is what it is, and he's had some nice performances with no runs allowed or whatever, even though he's allowed base runners, even though he hasn't struck guys out. So we're just going to throw him out here in this very important game against the Milwaukee Brewers, in which Nick Lodolo has pitched fantastically, and the Reds have got a 3-run lead. And so we're just going to see what happens here. I think they should have gone to anyone else in the 7th inning. I don't know that there's a correct answer, but I know that they chose the wrong one.
Yeah, you're right. Chase Petty has gotten pretty lucky before yesterday's game, he had an ERA of 3.72 and he had a FIP of 5.37. So the ball has definitely bounced his way, I guess, pun intended, over his outings at the big league level thus far this year. I don't know what the answer is. We talked about that the Reds can't stand pat. They can either be buyers, they can be sellers, they can sell to bolster for next year. I think whatever they do, whether it's buy now to try and get into the wild card for sure, or sell now to reload for next year, it has to involve bringing in some bona fide bullpen arms. Now,
right,
if you feel like Emilio Pagán's re-signing was getting that bona fide bullpen arm, I tend to disagree. There's a reason that before last season, Emilio Pagán wasn't used as a closer by anybody. He had closed one other time and he didn't do very well. The Reds have to go out and get some legitimate arms. Now, Caleb Ferguson, I feel like, has been a legitimate add to this bullpen. Pierce Johnson has been a legitimate add to this bullpen, but it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. They're going to have to go get more guys because the days of running relievers out there for 82 ball games, Jeff, has to be over.
It's just wild to think that they spent, based on even the money that they gave Emilio Pagán, I think they spent somewhere around $26 million on the bullpen in the offseason. And we are sitting here, and it's not even an objective thing. Like Terry Francona was sitting in Milwaukee on Monday night saying, we got to go to Chase Petty, and he's got to get us more than 3 outs. That's horrible because Chase Petty was supposed to be a starter. He was not supposed to be a relief pitcher. He has kind of fallen into that role right now, and there's an intriguing bit to that, but he's not developing in the way that I really want him to be an effective relief pitcher. But you're right. Like when you really try to break it down, it's like there's not that guy that you bring in and other teams are like, all right. We got to hope we can get something off this guy. They haven't had that guy, and I'm going to say something that's going to ruffle some people's feathers. They haven't had that guy since Graham Ashcraft went on the IL because Graham Ashcraft was that guy.
Yep.
And
he was that guy last year too.
I hope he can come back. And they're talking about him possibly coming back. But what is the version of what is the version of Graham Ashcraft that is coming back this season? Because I kind of wrote him off for the rest of the year whenever he went on the IL with the elbow injury that isn't Tommy John. And yet all of a sudden they're talking about, well, he's working his way back. They're doing this thing now where everyone's rehab is that fast. Everyone's injury time is that fast. And all of a sudden they're back. And I really hope it doesn't hurt these guys long term. But Emilio Pagán thought he had a grade 3 hamstring tear and he was done. And now he's back before July.
I'm stunned. I said that the night we recorded after that hamstring injury that we would not see him again this year. And I am stunned that he is stunned. Back. I am, and listen, Jeff, he only pitched 2 rehab outings for Louisville. I don't know that hamstring's fully tested, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned for Emilio's health. You're right. It feels like they're rushing everybody back. Hunter Greene comes back this coming weekend. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but that feels fast. Everybody in the last 2 months, it feels like they have really accelerated their return to the big leagues. And I don't know that any of those rushed returns have really found any measure of success right away when they've come back.
No, it's wild to imagine what we've seen from these Reds injuries and how quickly these guys have come back. But man, this bullpen, I cannot imagine being a starter for the Cincinnati Reds ball club because you come out of the game, somebody takes you out of the ball game. Well, Tito takes you out of the ball game, and you sit in the dugout, and you probably sit there and you reflect, and you're like, all right, well, this pitch to this guy could have been better. This pitch to this guy was awesome. And all right, what are we looking at here? Scoreboard. All right, I'm up. Oh, we're not up enough. We're not up enough.
Well, listen, Jeff, I know that the bullpen has been frustrating, but like I said a little while ago, the first 5 innings of most Reds games have been entertaining and very interesting. Nick Lodolo did not disappoint yesterday. We're going to talk about Nick Lodolo coming up next.
All throughout the World Cup, every goal pays over on FanDuel. Whether you wager on a match today, tomorrow, the USA, whether it be Brazil, whoever it might be, each team that scores gives you a bonus bet. That is the promotion that they're running right now. All you have to do is activate your token in your profile over at FanDuel.com. You can use those bonus bets, by the way, on Major League Baseball action. And as we have been telling you little bits and pieces throughout the Red season, you got to look at the first 5 because the bullpen, I wouldn't wager on that. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But the first 5 for Tuesday night's ball game against the Milwaukee Brewers, the Reds are plus 165 in the first 5 innings against Brandon Sproat with Rhett Lauder on the mound. I think I kind of like that. Yeah, first 5, yeah, plus 165. Go check that out over on FanDuel.com and jump in on all the World Cup action with all their great promos, including the Every Goal Pays promotion. That's on FanDuel.com.
Thanks for being an everydayer. Make sure you have clicked the subscribe button and the notification bell. You can follow Jeff on all of the socials. He's at Jeff Carr. That's Jeff with 3 Fs. You can follow me on Twitter X at S Offenbaker. That's with 2 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. All right, Jeff, 5 innings, shutout baseball. Nick Lodolo leaves with a 1-0 lead. And you're right, that evaporated fairly quickly post Nick Lodolo. The days of a starting pitcher throwing complete games and going into the 7th, 8th inning are mostly over. There's not really anybody on this Reds team that's going to get you into the 8th inning occasionally. And it's a big deal when it happens. Sometimes we see a guy bridge into the 7th. Usually they don't complete the 7th. This bullpen is so bad, though, that you got to think the starters just want to try and push it as far as they can to try and give this team a win, because you're right. Nick Lodolo barely had got sat down and finished high-fiving everybody, and the lead is gone.
Yeah, he pitched pretty well. He did give up too many walks. He was really good at limiting the contact, limiting the hard contact from Brewers hitters in this game. There were a lot of good moments there where he was able to deliver the exact right pitch that he needed to deliver to keep the Brewers from doing anything of damage against him. And so I was happy to see that. I think that is a key part of his, season and developing and taking the next step toward feeling good about being on the mound again. But you can still tell the curveball scares him. And it's not the pitch itself. It's what happens after. The whole idea of worrying about getting a blister and all this other stuff. He still goes long periods of time without throwing it. There was a period of time between the 3rd and 4th inning where it was sinker, changeup, sinker, changeup, sinker, 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 changeup. The double that he gave up to Sal Frelick was 4 straight sinkers. And on the 4th sinker, he doubled. And I'm like, well, yeah, guy's seen the same pitch 4 times in a row. Of course he's going to hit it. So I think that ultimately we're still seeing a solid version of Nick Lodolo. We're not seeing the Nick Lodolo that we know. In fact, this Nick Lodolo, Steve, I don't know if this thought came across your mind at all, but this guy reminds me of Tyler Mahle. Like, you remember Tyler Mahle before he really went off? He had to throw the perfect pitch every single time. And because of that, got into trouble throwing high pitch counts too early. And in some cases, walking too many guys too early. And that's how this felt for Nick Lodolo in Milwaukee, albeit he was able to, completely mitigate any damage from any base runners he allowed.
I said a few weeks ago, Jeff, I'm not sure that this version of Nick Lodolo can hold his ground and stay in the Reds rotation. Now, this was a good start from him yesterday, but we need to see more. Kudos to him for shutting down, the Brewers and, leaving with a lead and a shutout. But you're right. He did walk too many guys. You're right. he is relying on the other pitches way too much. And it's not going to take very much film review at all for his next opponent to know that and know what's coming. If you know you're not getting that back foot breaker, it changes the at bat. And I think more and more people are going to start figuring out that he's just not going to throw that pitch. And if he's not going to throw that pitch, we're going to see him get tagged a lot, which is unfortunate. I hope that he just begins to lean into it and throws it, and whatever happens, happens.
He hit William Contreras with it because at least on the scoreboard it said curveball, and it was behind him and it hit his back foot. It hit the back part of his back foot, and William Contreras being a right-handed hitter, that's pretty impressive to think about coming from a left-handed pitcher. Like, that thing had to break crazy to hit that part of his foot. But after that point, you saw that he had no confidence in it whatsoever. So maybe he just didn't have a feel for it. It was hot. I'm telling you what, it was hot in Milwaukee today. For some reason, I chose to come up to Milwaukee at the hottest part of the year. I even texted our friend Chuck over at Locked On Brewers. I'm just like, man, it's hot. And he's like, yeah, it's hot for like 3 days, and you chose those 3 days. So congrats. And maybe that was like Nick Lodolo having flashbacks to Arizona where he got the blister in the first place this year. And so he chose to limit that pitch. But that's not who Nick Lodolo is. Without the curveball, he is just a very mid pitcher. And so him coming back isn't the boon to the starting rotation that we needed it to be. And so that's where Hunter Greene comes in, albeit it feels like his rehab went really fast too.
Yeah, he threw 85 pitches in Louisville in his second rehab start, and they let him pitch into the 7th inning to get to the 85 pitches. I think he was programmed for 6, and they went ahead and let him go back out to get that pitch count up a little bit. You know, big league level, we know this is different. Every starting pitcher that we've ever talked to says it's just different when you're pitching in the majors. If he can give you the same 80 pitches at the big league level, I certainly don't look for him to go push past 80, 85 pitches in his first start back. But he could be a real bolster to this Reds rotation. But I'm not sure he's going to have it for the first couple starts out.
No, I think it's at least 2 starts before he is back to what he was doing last year. And that's just going 6 or 7 innings. Like, at this point, I'm expecting him to go 5 innings. And we know what that means. That means the bullpen has to cover 12 outs, and it doesn't look like they can do that, which is annoying because every other team in Major League Baseball, yeah, there's a couple, but most of the teams that have it figured out understand, yeah, their starters go 5 innings, and their bullpen is capable of covering the rest. The Reds are among the teams that don't understand that. Like, the Washington Nationals are also part of that group. The Nationals have a clear, far and away clear playoff lineup, and their pitching staff couldn't be any further from a playoff pitching staff. The Reds are in the same boat because of their bullpen, because their starters can do it. Like, I imagine if the Reds were to make some sort of playoff series, let's say it's a 3-game wildcard series, and it's not against the Dodgers who are just going to beat them in the first 2 games anyway. Let's say it's against a team that they could conceivably beat. That team is just going to work the Red starters to the bone to make sure that they get into that bullpen, because once they do, they feel super comfortable. But with Hunter Greene coming back, with Nick Lodolo in the staff, Chase Burns is pitching well, but at the same time, we're starting to wonder how much longer he's going to pitch. And Rhett Lauder and Brady Singer seem to kind of trade off good and bad starts. Like, it sort of feels like this pitching staff is getting right, but still has plenty of question marks as we head into the month of July.
Yeah, and like we talked about in the last segment, unless they go get somebody to bolster this bullpen, I'm not sure what you can do. Chase Burns, we're fast approaching the point where they're going to have to start talking about where his natural shutdown line is. They haven't done anything to skip turns. They haven't done anything to limit wear and tear. He's close now. He's right up against the timeline of being out of pitches, I guess. However we're going to phrase this: innings, pitches,
right,
starts, appearances, being out of that within a month. by the end of July, they may have to legitimately, seriously consider shutting him down.
Yeah, because you're talking about a guy jumping from the number of innings he had last year, which was the most he's ever had, to the number of innings he's had this year, which is the most he's ever had. And it's on a team that's not a playoff team. So they've really got to manage this correctly. And the pitching staff continues to be a bit of a question mark as you head into the rest of this series, because you still got 3 games left in Milwaukee. And with Rhett Lowder on the mound on Tuesday night, there's no less pressure on the dude to actually, continue to develop. Thank you for joining us on today's Locked On Reds podcast. Actually, have been down at American Family Field. I almost called it Miller Park. I think, it's different name now, American Family Field, but gotten the chance to go to the game on Monday night, going to be there on Tuesday night. Got to meet Daniel. Appreciated him saying, hey, if you're at American Family Field, definitely come over and say hey to me. Happy to talk Reds with you whenever you see us. And I mean, honestly, Steve and I are at the ballpark all the time. Just really make sure you come up and say, hey, we really appreciate that sort of thing, and really appreciate you subscribing right here on the Locked On Reds podcast as we move through the rest of the season. And we've got so much content each and every day for you, just talking about the Cincinnati Reds all the time. Steve, this Brewers series, we talked about the fact that the way that they can at least accomplish the stated goal was to win the first 2. Well, they didn't. But it feels like they have an opportunity in game 3 to possibly get that win, so they could still split the series and not have to worry about game 4. You could leave that up to fun, and let's see what happens with Chase Burns against Jacob Mizorowski. But where you're talking about Rhett Lowder in tonight's game and all the pressure that's going to be on him in something that he needs to deliver, albeit he has had some mixed results so far this season, as we continue to see the anti-scouting report performance that he puts up, where he has to deal with walking guys. And he's never going to be a big strikeout pitcher, but if you're also going to walk guys on top of that, then, man, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, over his last 4 starts, he's walked 11 guys, Jeff. And here's the number that really is problematic. The Reds really need Rhett Lowder to cover some innings and not let this bullpen blow another game. The problem is, in his last 3 starts, the best he's been able to do is 5 2/3. His last 3 starts, 5 2/3, 5 1/3, 5 2/3. So, when we're asking a pitcher to cover 6 innings, try to get into the 7th, with Rhett Lowder, we would just like to see him get to the 6th, to get through the 6th. I think that's probably going to be the cap. If he can get 6 full innings for the Reds tonight and limit the amount of bullpen that has to be played, that really leaves you 2 innings to cover till you get to Emilio Pagán. Emilio Pagán's going to pitch in this game regardless of what's going on. I think at this point we will see Emilio. You'll see Emilio. I expect to hear you on the broadcast with I'm going to be disappointed if I don't. But we're talking about 2 innings that they got to cover. If this bullpen can't cover 2 innings, then we just need to be done already, because they've got to be able to do that. So Rhett Lowder's pressure's on. And then now a start from Andrew Abbott in the 3rd game of this series takes on a whole bigger, important vibe, because you're right. We've talked about that 4th game in Chase Burns, and who knows what's going to happen, facing probably the best pitcher in the National League. So the Reds are going to have to win the next 2. To remain relevant, we said coming into the series, they're hanging on by a thread. They lose these next 2 games, that thread is cut. And we're going to have a whole different conversation heading in to next weekend, because it's going to be sell, baby, sell.
Yeah, it stinks that they've put themselves in this position, that games against the Milwaukee Brewers are so important, because we've talked about this since the beginning of 2023. The Reds have a win percentage against the Brewers of something like 30%. Like, they are dominated by the Milwaukee Brewers time in and time out. And it seems like any time something hangs in the balance and the Brewers are the thing that is between the Reds and getting to their destination, the Brewers stop them, whatever that is. And so here they are again in a position to stop the Reds, albeit really early on in the season. I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are just like, God, it's like, it feels like there's so much time left. I don't disagree, but what we are seeing on the field has continued on in every series that we've watched. They seem to find ways to lose as opposed to finding ways to win. And kind of getting back to the two starting pitchers here between Andrew Abbott and Rhett Lauder, like Andrew Abbott's last start was kind of mediocre, not the best of his season. And he has done a really good job of turning things around from his rough start. But I hope that he can bounce back nicely against Milwaukee. And then you also have Rhett Lauder, who I feel like he has command of all of his pitches. And he has a good pitch mix, but he doesn't have an out pitch. He doesn't have that one pitch that he can lean on and just get out of an at-bat, get out of an inning, get out of a jam. Like he's just kind of got to continue to be Rhett Lauder in order to do all of those things. And I just don't think he has reached that point in his development where not having an out pitch is not a problem.
There's a theme with these two starting pitchers. I told you Rhett Lauder's numbers, Andrew Abbott's numbers, Jeff, last 3 starts, more of the same, 5 innings, 5 innings, 5 1/3 innings. Neither one of these guys have been covering very much ground. And I know they're throwing a fair amount of pitches in those 5 innings, but it's still just 5 innings. Neither one of these guys can leave 4 innings for the bullpen to cover. So the key to success in both of these games for me, stretch into the 6th inning. Both pitchers have to do that. This has been a very pitcher-heavy episode, Jeff. Before we get out of here, I did want to make mention of 2 things on the offensive side of things from last night's game. Number 1, Elly De La Cruz batting leadoff again. Had a homer from the right side of the plate in this game. Love to see that. That's his first home run since coming back from the injured list. I love that it came as a right-handed hitter. I'm excited to see more of that from Elly De La Cruz. And also, shout out to Tyler Stevenson for doing that thing I said I needed him to do in this series, which is continue to pile on with his numbers. Looked really good at the plate in that game last night. Had the big double. All in on Tyler Stevenson right now in the way that he's seeing the ball.
And definitely want to talk for a moment about Dane Myers because, man, that catch was amazing. And the crash into the wall in center field was equally as staggering on the opposite side of, like, you know, I was concerned for him and I watched the replay and saw how he really ran full speed into that wall. Looks like it's probably a shoulder injury. I haven't seen any update. Have you seen any updates about Dane Myers since yet. I'm hoping that he's okay and everything's all right. But like, that was such a crazy play to see him actually hang on to that. I mean, he went full speed into the center field wall there in American Family Field and still held on to the ball. Like, I definitely could not do that. First of all, I wouldn't even got to the ball. So it's not like I'm comparing myself to Dane Myers in that moment there. But the fact that he was able to hit the ball full speed and hold on to that ball was just absolutely impressive. And I really want to see that everything is okay with him and then he continues the season, because have there been frustrations? Sure. But there's also been a lot of fun with Dane Myers, and what he has brought to this team has been everything that we had hoped for to this point.
Yeah, initial x-rays at the ballpark, Jeff, were negative. However, they did send him to a local area hospital in Milwaukee for further evaluation. We'll probably hear more about what's going on with him today at some point.
That's good to hear. Hopefully, we will get some good news. And hopefully, Rhett Lauder and the lineup will deliver on Tuesday night as I'm here for one more game. Hopefully, we get a win. I know that Steve and Tim will have you covered for that on tomorrow's Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. And, of course, Tim with the postcast after each and every ball game. That's right here on the Locked On Reds channel on YouTube and on the audio feed shortly after the live stream is over for the postcast. But also make sure you check out Locked On MLB. They cover the league with 3 different shows every single day. So you get 3 different angles talking about Major League Baseball. That's all on Locked On MLB. It's just like Locked On Reds, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. But as for Tim, Steve, and myself, we will be Locked On Reds every single day.